I'm Tony Ruiz of Gold Derby here with Noah Jupe, who plays Temple Franklin, the grandson of the great Benjamin Franklin in the TV Plus limited series Franklin. And Noah, uh, Temple is very much a man trying to figure out himself, apart from this mammoth human being that is his grandfather. And so I'm curious, what about this character you particularly kind of latched into?
Um, I think the fundamental part of this character that really appealed to me so much and potentially made my job easier than it should have been was how much I related to the character as well, in the sense that, you know, I'm going through that same period of change, of searching for identity, of trying to find my place in the world. And there was really an insane amount of parallels between me and Temple. I mean, it was even down to, Temple arrives in Paris and meets these friends and they take him out in Paris. And the actors playing those friends would take me out in Paris after the shooting. And it was just like, I was finding myself, I was maturing throughout the shoot. And so I was sort of on the same journey as Temple was, just maybe 300 years later.
Well, and what one of the things that I really kind of attach myself to with this character is that this is something that everybody goes through at some point or another. But
Yeah.
for Temple, it's against the backdrop of this massive moment in the history of the world, which I have to imagine that has to play into kind of his growth, his growing pains, so to speak.
Exactly. It's on an extremely heightened scale. But I think that that's what makes it so interesting is when you take, a topic like the American Revolution or Benjamin Franklin. It's huge. There's so much to talk about. It's such a wild backdrop. But when you root those characters in universal feelings and journeys, you suddenly connect the audience to the emotional story. And I think that that's really important when explaining these times to people, because it helps them inform them, because they're way more connected than they would be if you were just telling them information. So it was really important to find those real universal feelings that we all go through when we're teenagers and growing up, and with our parents, and the battles with our parents, and then also put the backdrop of that wild time behind it. And it then subconsciously people are taking in the information because they just love the characters. I mean, hopefully.
Well, and I think also one of the great things about the series is that Temple is not always, as most teenagers maturing into adulthood, he doesn't always make the best decisions, and he doesn't always respond to things in a great way. He's not always likable. And so did you kind of lean into those moments where, not trying to make him too likable, but to make him more authentic rather than likable?
Of course. I mean, these he's only human, and there's many things that he's thrown into, which for a human being at 16 to be thrown into that world is intense and traumatic, to be honest. So of course it had a toll on him. And yeah, I made sure to I think for me as an actor as well, I just the most exciting characters to me are the ones that are layered and that are multicolored and that aren't straightforward. And I think Temple was really that for me. There's a lot going on, and there's a lot of sides to him, and he doesn't always make the right choices. But I love exploring that and displaying that. And then when you step back, you get this incredible journey because of the different layers.
And speaking of layers, this is a completely seems like an immersive shoot. When I was talking to Tim Van Patten or Olivier, the costume designer, how
Yeah.
much did all those elements actually shooting in Paris and around Paris and the period, the garb, the makeup, how much did all of that kind of factor in to the performance?
Oh my God. In the in a huge way. I mean, it was there was a time period before shooting when I'd sort of be reading through the script and trying to get prepared and doing my research, and I'd be standing in the mirror trying to work on my posture and trying to work on my bow and the etiquette, and it's just, I'm like, oh, I'm not believable as this. It's not quite working. And then you go to the costume fitting or you step on set for the first time and everyone's in these insanely elegant outfits and in these beautiful sets that were actually the real thing. We shot in most of the real places that these events occurred. And so yeah, once you're in it and you're invested in that way, I mean, it's like, it's huge. It completely transforms you. And suddenly my posture was fixed because the costume fitted perfectly and made me feel like I was in a completely different time. So yeah, it has a really huge effect on it has a huge effect on you as an actor being part of that. Yeah.
The voice I also found really interesting, because you have to do something very interesting, and that is you have to sound American, and then you have to sound like an American speaking French.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it
Please
was
tell me how you did that.
yeah, it's funny because at first I think someone said this to me the other day, because there was a point when we were deciding whether for my accent to be British or American, because obviously the American accent at that time would have only just been really starting to develop. And I think in the end, we wanted to sort of separate Americans and Britain seeing and British people, considering they were at odds with one another. And therefore we sort of chose to go with the um American accent, but I was really trying to like add some British consonants in there, and there's a lot more like staccato with it. And so yeah, it was there's a lot more staccato with it, and then also then um taking that and then putting that into the French and trying to do that with all with all the French was just, it was wild. It was yeah, it was very difficult, but fun. I mean, I love accents, I love languages, and it's just an amazing excuse to learn a new language. Um it's just really, yeah, it was such a great opportunity.
Well, I want to ask something about, you're working here with Michael Douglas, and I noticed a parallel between Temple the character and Michael Douglas the actor, in that both of them at different points in their life, Michael is the son of this gigantic film star and had to find his own way and come out of that shadow. So I'm curious, did you and Michael talk about that at all?
Um, Interestingly enough, not that parallel, no. But I think I spoke to Michael a lot about my own sort of parallels with him, just being, starting out in the industry and how it feels. And but yeah, now that you say that, that is actually such an interesting parallel. And those are big boots to fill. I'm sure Michael felt similar to Temple in the sense of like, it's insane. There's a lot of pressure, and I think the different paths that Temple and Michael took is Michael really forged his own path and created his own name for himself, and I think it will go down as one of the greats along with his father. Whereas Temple, I think the pressure was a little bit too much. And we went to visit his grave in the Père Lachaise, and he's got this really small little humble grave next to his wife. And he obviously didn't he died without a lot of money, and had a loving family, which is potentially more important. But in terms of a career, he wasn't as successful. So I think that pressure of having a relative like that is a lot to bear. And it's really takes a toll on you, I think.
What was the what was it like just working with Michael Douglas? I mean, that's just got to be just one of those moments where you're like, wow, this is really happening.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. I always have this it's always such an interesting thing working with actors that you love, because there's their performances and then there's them as people, and at the end of the day you're just meeting a new person, and yes, you love and respect them, but they're people, and it's really hard to sort of decipher, because there's points when you get, me and Michael were working every day, and I'd be like, oh, good morning, Michael, like as I was getting my coffee, or we'd be sat next to each other chatting, and I'd be like, and then suddenly in my head you go, oh fuck, I'm sat next to Michael Douglas and I'm like working with Michael Douglas, and then it suddenly all like you have this out of body experience. But I think he's such a humble professional man, and a pleasure to work with, and the energy he brings to a set is just something to marvel at, and still to this day the same amount of passion for it, and I really hope to be half of the man and actor that he is one day.
Yeah, one of my favorite scenes in the entire series. It's a small moment, but it's the moment that Temple and Benjamin Franklin say goodbye to each other. It's such a small moment, and it's so, and I mean this in the best way, underwritten. There's not a lot of dialogue between the two, and yet there's so much communicated. Can you just tell me about that scene in particular?
Yeah, I mean that scene was really interesting because it was shot sort of later on in the shoot, so kind of near the end. So it was kind of, there was a lot of, we've been working for I think 7 months together. We didn't actually see the finished version of that scene for quite a while. And when it came through, it was just, there was a lot of emotion with it. It's I think they both try and say a lot to one another, and they both try and to change each other, and I think they sort of have to accept that they're both on different paths, and that's a really hard thing to accept, but to do that and to show your respect and love for that person, and just accept them for who they are, I think is the the best thing you can do and the most powerful thing you can do. And there isn't a lot to say, because throughout the whole series, as soon as they started talking more than a few lines, they've argued or they've been at odds. So I think they just knew that they both had to keep it simple. But I always say the more simple, the more powerful, I think, when it comes to that. And I think Kirk and Howard, the writers, did an excellent job with that last scene. And it was very emotional, like full circle moment. It was almost like saying goodbye to Michael and to Franklin.
After doing a project like this, that you're like, yeah, this takes 7 months, and you're so immersed in it. How do you, when it's over, what's like kind of the first thing you do when you leave a huge project like this? Do you go right into something else? Do you do something completely different? What's kind of your approach to that?
I travel. I'll get out of there and I'll just go. I think I went to Thailand after this one. And I just, I packed my things and I just flew to Thailand with some of my friends and turn off my phone for a few months and just sort of reset. And I think with this one, it was a long job, spending a lot of time in someone else's mind, in someone else's character. You really need to find your roots again, I think. So it was about just sort of resetting as Noah for a little bit, and then yeah, but sometimes that's not possible, and sometimes you're lucky enough to have opportunities to go right into another job, in which case I definitely would, because I can't get enough of my work. I absolutely love it. But in an ideal world, yeah, a few months to travel, to go somewhere, to explore somewhere for me. I think I spend a lot of time in traveling around a lot of beautiful and excellent places, but I never do it for me. I do it for a job. So it's not technically a holiday, even though I'm like in Spain or something shooting. So I think taking holidays and rest for myself is important.
You've managed to do that still, even after all this time, that very rare thing is go from child actor to adult actor, and make that transition that so many other people have a difficult time with. What's been the secret for you to make that transition?
To be completely honest, I don't know if I've made it yet. I think I'm still on like the cusp. I'm feeling a lot better about it, but it's really difficult. It's such a difficult industry to try and go from one thing to another, just anything. If you're known for being this type of character, it's terribly hard to play this type of character. And it's same with child actors going into adult actors, I think, in the sense of people, I'm lucky enough to have movies that I did when I was younger that people know me for. But I was 13, 14 then. And so if, someone calls someone up and is like, hey, Noah would be great for this part, people are like, why? He's 13, 14. And people are like, no, he's actually grown up and he's actually 19 now. But it's tough for people to it's tough to break out of the mold of the job that you've been most successful for, the roles that you're known for playing. So it's been difficult, but I think I'm on the cusp of hopefully making it to an adult actor. That would be the dream, I think.
Well, Noah Jupe, congratulations. Such a great series and a great performance. Everybody go to goldderby.com, make your predictions for the upcoming award season, and stay tuned for interviews with more contenders in the coming weeks. Noah Jupe, congratulations. A great pleasure. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.